Hello, welcome to IDDTalks here at ADA University. My name is Anastasia Lavrina. In this episode, we'll talk about the recent visit of a delegation, members of the Caspian Policy Center based in Washington, D.C., to Azerbaijan, to the liberated Karabakh, the visit to ADA University, and participation in the various types of meetings with the high-level officials. Joining me now is Mr. James Sharp, the former UK ambassador. Warm welcome.
It's always a pleasure, and thank you for the opportunity. I mean, as you know, I was in Azerbaijan just earlier this week, and it would have been great to have the opportunity to sit down with you, but sadly the time wasn't available. But now my time is all yours.
Thank you so much. So as a part of the delegation of the Caspian Policy Center, recently you visited Azerbaijan. Could you start by sharing your impressions from your recent visit to Karabakh?
No, of course. The Caspian Policy Center delegation, I mean, had various aims for the visit. And, the Caspian Policy Center itself focuses on the greater Caspian region, if you like, South Caucasus and Central Asia, politics, security, climate change and water, for example, but also increasingly things like connectivity and critical minerals and the role of Central Asia, the greater Caspian region in sort of all of the big issues of the world economy and world politics nowadays. And I think that for some of them, this was the first time they've been to Azerbaijan for some time. Obviously, as you know, I was in Baku actually quite recently for the ADA seminar. But for me, it's a great opportunity to come back and just revisit certain issues and go to new places as well. And you mentioned Karabakh. So, we visited Akhdam, Khankandi and Shusha during this trip. And it's just fascinating. It's always very interesting for me to come back to the territory and see the development, see the progress. And I've been to all of these places before, but it's just, as I say, very interesting to see how much has been done since the last time I visited. And Akhdam is completely unrecognizable, I think I would say, in that all of the big industrial area, the new train station we visited, we didn't go on the train, unfortunately, but able to see the new train station, all the residential blocks and the new villages that are being built. So a lot of work has been happening in Akhdam for sure. Shusha too, I think we clearly see the development there and the way that the town centre is now being remodeled and turned back into more of a historic town centre as it was previously. So very, very pretty, some very nice buildings, very nice renovation works that have happened. But I think one of the other very nice things about being in Shusha actually was a slight surprise for us, but it's been a very, very good surprise and really made the visit in some ways. We've actually been taken to one of the new residential complexes with the very nice apartment blocks. And just to see the kids playing there and the families out there talking to each other in sort of late afternoon. And it just felt really normal and natural and just like, there's real life. It wasn't just a construction site as some of the towns looked like. It was very much a place where people lived and families lived and children played. So that was a very positive feeling. Khankandi, of course, is much more recent. The Azerbaijani presence there, and of course, therefore, the works that have been taking place are not as advanced. Also, of course, as you know, on my last trip as well, both this trip and my last trip in April, I visited Karabakh University. So very, very interesting to see that the renovation, and of course, meet the students and talk to the students, who are always very, very positive and very proud about the fact that they're studying there. So as I say, it's just really interesting for all of us just to see the developments that are taking place in the territories.
I'm sure everybody who is traveling to Karabakh is being impressed by the level of reconstruction, how it's happening quickly. So you're coming now, and then in 2 months going there, you can see absolutely different reality. So you yourself, with your colleagues, witnessed the ongoing reconstruction. From your perspectives, what are the most urgent needs in the post-conflict recovery process?
Well, I think the main issues from the word go, quite frankly, have always been, number one is deciding which places you want to return the IDPs to, where you have the issue over the main places, the main settlements, the main towns. Before the 1990s were Akhdam, Fuzuli and Jibrail, the main population centres, but they were also the most heavily mined. So getting people back there would require a lot of demining, whereas it's easier to then resettle people into Zangilan and Lachin, for example, where there weren't any big minefields. So that was one of the dilemmas. I know. I think that the government's clearly done both, if you like. I've been to Lachin last year, and then also to as I mentioned, to Aghdam and Shusha this year. So it's been interesting to see the choices that they made with that. And once you've started on the demining, of course, you have to build infrastructure. The roads, where they've done amazingly well. I mean, the roads that have been built in the territories are quite extraordinary, quite frankly, and very, very quickly. The roads, the electricity, the gas, the water, all of those things, before you can then think about starting construction. So there's a number of phases that need to take place, and of course, underlying that is the people. It's all about the return of the internally displaced persons, and that's critical. That is the driving force of what the government is trying to do in the territories. So how do you persuade people to go back? And you may well find that pensioners will go back, and if there are medical facilities there, hospitals and what have you. But then how do you get sort of the working age people to go back? How do you get families to go back? You need schools, but critically, of course, you need jobs. So that was always one of the big issues. How do you create the opportunities, the employment opportunities that people will need in order to persuade them to go back? So that's clearly been going ahead. And think that Aghdam, we saw this very, very big industrial park, which is very impressive since I was last there, just how many factories and manufacturing facilities have been built. So that's clearly creating jobs. And construction itself, of course, will create jobs, because it's almost self-reinforcing that if you happen to build infrastructure, the roads and the buildings, you need workers. So a lot of the population will be the workers. The more they build, the more people can come back. So as I say, it becomes a bit self-reinforcing. And then you need the services, you need the administration officers, you need the school teachers, you need the medical staff. So I think it's interesting just to look at all of that. And now, the next phase will later on in the next year or two will be the extent to which you can then develop further jobs. I know that tourism and agriculture were always cited as being two of the big areas where the administration wanted people to work. But of course, both of those, I think, will only come to full fruition once the demining has been successful. Because yes, you can do a lot of agriculture, but equally you just need to be careful to make sure you obviously don't step on a mine. Same with tourism as well. There's some beautiful countryside there, I have to say, just driving around in Karabakh. But of course, hiking through the hills and the forest, I don't think that's really going to be possible for some time until the actual people feel safe that the areas haven't been mined or there aren't unexploded ordnance there. So I think it's still a work in progress, but there are those issues. As I say, the demining, the infrastructure, the construction of buildings, and then the jobs for people to persuade them to return are all almost like sequentially things that need to happen. And they clearly are happening. I think the question now is to what extent the progress can be maintained, given all of the, the initial, it's been 3.5 years or so, 4 years now. So now it'll be a question of how much you can maintain that level of progress.
Well, Mr. Ambassador, I would like to know your opinion on the next question. How do you assess the role of the international partners, including the United Kingdom, in supporting Azerbaijan's recovery and redevelopment of the liberated lands?
You're right. I mean, I'm very proud that we were maybe the first embassy to support demining, through support for UNDP at that time. And we supplied some British experts to come and help Anima with all of the actual sort of technical aspects of demining. There are also a number of British companies. I think 3 British companies were involved in the demining effort. I think some of those are left now. They had partners, Azerbaijani local partners, and of course part of the approach was to help develop and train Azerbaijanis and Azerbaijani companies to take on the work themselves. That seems to be increasingly successful. So yes, international support, I think, has been very, very valuable. But over time, of course, it's clear that the government would want Azerbaijani companies and the government itself to take full responsibility for the demining. I think that the United Kingdom embassy continued its contribution. I know that other countries have provided a contribution as well, financial or technical support. So, but it's an ongoing effort, to be honest. I mean, demining is a very, very long process, and there are still quite a number of countries who, maybe Vietnam, Cambodia, and then places like Croatia, where they haven't yet fully cleared mines from wars which took place decades ago. So, don't expect this to happen in the next year or two. It will take a long time, and just gradually, I think that more and more land will become, clean, if you like, or cleared, and be available for construction or whatever other purposes you want it.
Mr. Sharp, from your diplomatic experience and from what you could see there on the liberated lands, how would you describe the current state of the negotiations about the peace agreement between Baku and Yerevan?
Well, I think that, to be honest, over the last year or so, I think that if you put aside the noise, then we've been very pleasantly surprised at the progress that's been made between the two countries by themselves talking bilaterally. Border delimitation talks seem to be going without any fuss or any sort of shouting. Yes, there are issues over the Zangezur link still to be resolved, but it seems like one of those things where some quiet negotiation should make it possible. And then the peace treaty, which, as you know, there was agreement actually on the text of the peace treaty. And the question now is, what are the what conditions need to be met for Azerbaijan to be ready to sign it? In terms of the in Minsk group, dissolution of the OSCE Minsk group, and of course the Armenian constitution. On the face of it, you then hear both sides. One side, the Armenian, saying none of this necessary. It's not necessary to change our constitution. The Azerbaijani side saying, well, yes, it is, and we're not going to sign before that. And I think that's negotiators, I hope, I think, are sort of talking quietly behind the scenes to sort of find out, what is the way through to sort of do something so you don't lose momentum for the next year and a half. And I mean, everyone's conscious that there are elections in Armenia next year. I think about the time that they're due to host the European Political Community Summit, actually. And the whole question is what will happen after that, and what will happen in terms of any progress on the Armenian constitution. But I'm quite hopeful. I mean, I've always been fairly optimistic that the two sides will actually, realise that it's actually in both of their interests to find a peace deal and sort of find those compromises necessary to make it happen. So I remain positive.
So during your trip to Azerbaijan, you also visited ADA University. What role do you think the institutions like ADA play in shaping the future diplomacy and regional cooperation? Well,
I mean, firstly, I'd say about universities is that the role they play in shaping young people, quite frankly. That for me was always one of the big things that I focused on when I was working in Azerbaijan, supporting the British Council and supporting the English language teaching and higher education links, because it kind of feels to me that that is the future of any country, really, is to make sure you get that right, the education system, make sure you then get younger people thinking about issues, and actually it's all about the direction they look. Do they look westwards? Do they, are they proficient in English language and foreign languages, so they can get their information sources from places other than the region? Things like that. And I kind of feel that those are big long-term strategic questions. So I've always been really, really happy to see how many Azerbaijanis have come to the United Kingdom to study. And the state scholarship scheme, which was started up again a few years ago, I think about at least half of them, are actually coming to the United Kingdom to study. So we're really pleased about that. Pleased that they're benefiting from United Life in UK and UK education system, but also that we will then be able to benefit from the relationship with them in the coming year, and that hopefully maintain that relationship and just help them sort of see the world outside, see the bigger picture, if you like, and see the outside world. So I think that within that context, it's really the role that universities can play in developing links with each other. So the dual degree programs that are now operating, and there's a British one with Warwick University on focus on renewable energy, a master's on renewable energy, which I hope is just the start of further high-level cooperation between our universities, because these are windows onto the world, if you like, for young people. So that seems to be the most important aspect to it. And yes, ADA has been very good in also doing a lot of research and doing think tank seminars and what have you, and bringing people to Azerbaijan to see the reality of Azerbaijan on the ground, which again I think is important, because you have to see places to understand them. You have to talk to the people in those countries to understand. And frankly, to be perfectly honest, that's true even for us diplomats, is that we may have a view of what the situation is like when we're back in London. But it's only when you come to not just visit a place, but live in a place that you really start to get under the surface and talk to people and understand really how they're thinking and why they think in the way they do, and why governments take the actions that they do. So, all of these links, whether they be students or whether they be through academic researchers and think tanks, I think they're really important just to promote understanding of each other's viewpoints, and yeah, so it's all very, very positive.
And finally, how does the Caspian Policy Center, based in Washington, balance its work across diverse priorities like security, energy, policy, trade, let's say, and diplomacy, given the complex dynamics of the Caspian region itself?
They are indeed complex, and that's why I think these visits are very useful, if I'm honest. As I say, for me, the motivation for coming to Azerbaijan again was somewhat different for some of the others who didn't have much of an idea about the country. But I think that one of the things that we've been focused on more recently is that broader connectivity question. And you've heard a lot about the Middle Corridor, of course. So that's been a theme that we've been focused on. And linked to that is the question of critical minerals, which I think I mentioned is a huge issue nowadays. And just the other day, China restricted exports again of some rare earth materials, which is causing car companies in the United States and Europe to suddenly say, we're not quite sure we can keep manufacturing our e-vehicles because we can't get the rare earths from China. So this whole question of where does the West get its critical minerals from when China has a stranglehold on them at the moment is moving up the agenda incredibly quickly, and that's where Central Asia and the Greater Caspian region will play a role, I'm sure. So a place like Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan have a lot of these minerals. And then you got the question following on from that is how do you then get them to Western markets? And that's where, of course, the Middle Corridor suddenly becomes very important. All the rail links or road links and through Kazakhstan, across the Caspian, and then through Azerbaijan, and then into Georgia and Turkey. So I think that what we've been focusing on recently as a Caspian Policy Center, and people are waking up to more and more, is you can't just sort of talk about the C5, the Central Asian Five, important as it is, but you have to look at the almost like kind of the through train, you might call it. It's like almost like the C6 with Azerbaijan, but then you have to think about the route through Georgia and Turkey as well to Western markets. So I think it's really what we've been trying to do is raise more awareness amongst policymakers of that need to sort of not look at blocks or sort of countries or small regions in isolation, but to look at the connectivity, the question about connectivity, how do they all connect together? And then what does it actually mean? Because you've both got the transport of materials, maybe raw materials from Central Asia through Azerbaijan. And of course, we went down to Alat, the port of Alat during our visit, because Alat is uniquely on the Middle Corridor, is the place where all of the Middle Corridor routes come together and the only place where they all come together. So it has this unique role and I think unique opportunity for Azerbaijan and Alat to actually develop that sort of nodal point into something more in terms of manufacturing and processing and assembly. So when we were down there, we saw not only the port and heard plans about how they're going to expand the port itself, but also there's an economic zone attached to the port of Alat. And again, just since I was last there about 3 years ago, to see the huge amount of construction, the number of factories and assembly plants that have been constructed there at the Alat economic zone as well, I think is very, very interesting development. And as I say, it plays very much to the things that the Caspian Policy Center has been focusing on and sort of raising awareness of, is looking at all of that as a continuum, if you like. And so I think that's this visit really reinforced that in the minds of most of the members of the delegation, just to sort of realize that Azerbaijan is not just an important country in its own right, but also it's important as one link, and a very important link in a very important chain for the West. So yeah, I think that was one of the overriding impressions that people got.
Ambassador Sharp, thank you. Thank you so much for joining our talk.
You're welcome. Anytime.